Hello, horror hounds. Welcome back to another episode of Sheebie Jeebies, the horror podcast by fans, for fans, and about fans. And today, look, threesome. That came out totally wrong. I know. So today, we are actually going to be covering Targets from 1968, Peter Bogdanovich's directorial debut. So I'm here with my husband, Baron Orlok.
Hello.
Star of the silent films. No.
Yeah, exactly.
And live from New York, our own film encyclopedia, Stone Gasman. Hello, Stone.
What's up, guys? Glad to be here to talk about Targets. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
What's your history with this movie? Because I've, honestly, it's one of those movies I've never fucking heard of, most.
A lot of people have never heard of it, but I think that's going to change very, very soon. I think so. Well, Targets is one of those dozens of movies that I watched when I just went to the library when I was growing up in high school, and I would just, rent like 7 or 8 tapes a week and then watch them all throughout the course of the week and then bring them back. Almost not matter what genre they are. I mean, I would rent everything from the classics to the westerns, everything. And Targets was one of them. It was released by Paramount Pictures in 1968, which, looking at the film, that kind of raises your eyebrows a little bit because it's obviously an independent production. And in this case, the very famous independent producer, Roger Corman, is really the man behind why Targets exists. And we'll talk a lot about him as well as Peter Bogdanovich. But when I first saw the movie, I got to confess that I was rather shocked at how matter of fact it was, and how it just it brought this theme to the threshold and putting the viewer in this position where, look, there are people that grab guns and they shoot people. We don't really. I mean, we could theorize, we could speculate all we want. The motives are all different. But and considering the fact this came out in 68, I mean, really ahead of its time. So I was immediately impressed with the movie. I mean, and of course I would discover all of early Peter Bogdanovich movies like Last Picture Show, Paper Moon, all those. And Targets was one that always stood out, largely because it's his feature debut. Mm-hmm. And I would put it on the level of like Robert Eggers's The Witch. As far as, impressive debuts. And he was super lucky to make that movie. Super lucky.
Yeah. And what strikes me about this movie is we have those two parallel narratives of fake horror with Byron Orlok, who is this classic horror film star who's getting ready to retire, right? Because he's sort of disillusioned with the direction that the business has taken. Or rather, the public's interpretation of his films, the public seems to think of them as high camp now, since we have much more terrifying things. Like, there's actual real life violence. We're seeing more shootings, especially, this was 68, so we'd already seen JFK, RFK, MLK Jr. assassinated, so this was a very real fear. So we have that fake horror narrative, but then we also have the other storyline, which is the real horror of the audience following this killer as he prepares to enact this mass shooting and into the shooting itself. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. You're just on that. You bought a ticket for the ride and you can't get off of it right now. I know. Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about like the Roger Corman aspect? Because I know that his condition for Bogdanovich, directing it was that he had to have Karloff on there for at least 2 days, and he had to use some stock footage from The Terror from 63. And I've never seen The Terror.
Yeah, it's interesting because okay, so I mean, that's the thing. Targets is a movie that, for all intents and purposes, shouldn't exist. And what I mean by that is that, it's not like Peter Bogdanovich was at a studio and he managed to engineer this project forward. No, Roger Corman, had put Bogdanovich to work for a few years. He had rewritten a picture called The Wild Angels, this motorcycle picture that became a huge hit. And he was sort of like a worker bee for like 3 or 4 years. He had already done stuff on the stage. He was directing plays when he was 20. I mean, people were saying that he was just a natural born director. And when he got the chance to work for Roger Corman, of course he took it, because that's where all of the young filmmakers flocked to get experience. And once they got the experience, then they might have the opportunity to do a feature of their own on a very, very low budget, one that's very restricted in what they can and cannot do. So after he and Bogdanovich had also worked on another picture called Voyage of the Prehistoric Women, something like that, where he is given credit on screen, but really he worked less than 10% on it. But anyway, so Roger Corman came to him with this proposal, said, look, Boris Karloff, and by this time, Boris Karloff was 80 years old. He was walking with a cane. I mean, you see it in the movie. It's sad. And he knew he was going to be probably gone within a year or so, but said, look, Boris Karloff owes me 2 days' work. Okay. What I want you to do, here's your assignment. Okay. I want you to take 20 minutes from this movie called The Terror, a movie I made with Boris Karloff and Jack Nicholson, who we see in the opening because he's in that segment from The Terror. And I want you to take 20 minutes of that movie, film 20 minutes with Karloff, and then invent a whole story on your own and bring it all together. That was the assignment. So he and his Peter Bogdanovich and his wife Polly Platt at the time, they were inspired basically by the Charles Whitman shootings. Charles Whitman was an Eagle Scout. He was, he was this model kid, this all-American kid, a Marine of all things, and he just took an arsenal of weapons, went up to this tower in Austin, and shot 14 people dead and wounded 30 others. And it was the very first nationwide. It wasn't the very first nationwide mass murder, of course. I mean, there had been others before, quietly, and it hadn't really gone national news. Charles Whitman changed everything. This was the first publicized nationwide mass shooting, and Charles Whitman. I mean, and they drew upon that. They drew upon the real terrors of today to and compare that to the terrors of the 30s, when people would go to the theater and they would see Dracula or Frankenstein, or my personal favorite is The Mummy. Just real quick, I mean, of all the look, I know Lauren loves Bride of Frankenstein. It's a masterpiece. Mine is The Mummy. Okay, the Mummy was the movie that freaked me out just a little bit when I was a kid. Even when he put his hand over a jacuzzi and started summoning spells on Yida Johann and whatever. But of all the Boris Karloff movies he made at Universal, that was my favorite. But I recently rewatched The Frankensteins, and I also rewatched a great one from 1949, Abbott and Costello Meet the Killer, Boris Karloff, or Boris Karloff is actually in the title. And just real quick, one thing about that film before I go back to targets is that I read very recently, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. Apparently that Abbott and Costello Meet the Killer, Boris Karloff, it was banned in Denmark because we see corpses, quote unquote, playing cards.
What? Is that like, is that one of those things where it's sacrilegious because, is it like, I can't think of words today, where you're dishonoring the dead?
Oh, I was thinking it's gambling.
Oh, yeah, they're playing bridge. They're not really gambling. they're playing bridge in the basement of this hotel.
The NPAA doesn't care.
Yeah.
I don't see what the problem is. If they're not really gambling, what is it? Is it the corpses themselves? Is that considered obscene?
Yeah, the actors are just sitting there just looking at the cards.
So these are real corpses. Okay.
They weren't
Okay.
real corpses. They were, yeah. It always makes me think of Super Troopers when they're fucking the bear in the woods, even though it's a stuffed bear. And they actually got a call. The Broken Lizard guys got a call from lawyers from the studio, say, "Yeah, are you harming that bear?"
Don't you think that? Okay, well, one, do you really think the bear is going to let you fuck it?
Mhm.
I'm sure the bear's going to have a problem with it. Bears are probably not into that. It's not the live ones.
Yeah, they'd rather eat
One of the
you.
Broken Lizard guys was like said to the lawyers, "Well, how do you know? Maybe the bear liked it."
I mean, if you're doing anything, he was here and writing bareback.
But anyway, so look, the thing about Targets is that Boris Karloff, he was literally at the end of his career. He was literally, he made like 4 films that year in 1968, but Targets is the only one that really matters. Let's put it that way. But he, and Bogdanovich wanted to open up the movie with Karloff just turning to him and Roger Corman saying, "This is the worst picture I've ever seen in my life." After watching The Terror, he wanted to open it up with that kind of, breaking the fourth wall. I like that. And then when we go out to the parking lot and we see the crosshairs on Karloff's head, and we realize that it's from a gun held by a surrogate for Charles Whitman, played by an actor named Tim O'Kelly, who sadly never really made anything else again. He left Hollywood soon afterward, and he died very young. He was only like 46 or something. I forget how he died, but originally Corman suggested. You know who Corman originally suggested to play the sniper?
No.
Who did I mention before that was with?
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah. Think about that for a moment. Let that sink in. This is literally right before Jack became famous with Easy Rider. Literally right before. He was on the cusp of exploding. Imagine what that would have been like for the film.
I mean, I can only judge it by the small amount of time that that I got to see him in the Terror footage. And I don't think it would have been, I think it would have been fine, but if you're an audience watching this, you're going to get confused, and it's probably not going to have the reaction that you would hope it would, right?
You know what? You're right. Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, also, I have to say, Bobby Thompson Tim O'Kelly, who plays Bobby Thompson, looks just like the guy from the Womanizer music video, and it's very distracting. Like, I hope they never remake Targets, because that dude would end up in
it. Well, how old's the music video? It's pretty old, isn't it?
Oh God, that's 15 years old.
Yeah.
So, but Targets, the narrative, it goes in 2 directions, right? Because we follow this, this old, this elderly movie star who is, done with the business, as Sam said, disillusioned by everything and by real life horror, and we follow him, and Bogdanovich spends an entire scene in a hotel room with him just telling a story, and I like how he juxtaposes that with the scenes in the house with the kid, where everything is all cold and cold colors, and everything with Karloff is warm colors, browns and yellows and reds and that kind of thing. And back at the house, it's almost like a television set. It's very artificial, and of course that's very intentional on the part of Peter Bogdanovich's wife, Polly Platt, who served as like the art director and the set director, a decorator. And on this new Criterion Blu-ray, which I'll talk about a little bit later, there's actually a 30-minute interview that they dug up from 1983 with Polly Platt that's very, very interesting. But we go in these 2 narratives. We follow Boris Karloff as he's, contemplating whether he wants to do this film or not. He's just kind of like done halfway out the door, that kind of thing. And then we have this all-American kid. We don't understand what is driving him, and he just kills his mother, kills his wife, and goes up on top of a water tower and starts killing people on the California freeway, which of course back then it was highly illegal to shoot on the California freeway, or
just to shoot people in general.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously. Shoot people, whether it's shooting people with a camera or shooting people with a gun. Okay, it's illegal either way.
Wait, so you could be on top of the oil refinery with a camera, though? You couldn't shoot. You couldn't shoot with a camera.
You can't be anywhere near the freeway. But being from the Roger Corman school of thinking, they break rules. Okay, that's just what they do. Permits. What's that?
They ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Well, you can just go out and shoot it. What's the problem? But yeah, and the climax takes place at a drive-in theater. And whenever I think of drive-in theaters, Targets is what I think of. Period. There's something about the it's a lost, oh man. And I understand why drive-ins are gone. I understand why they're gone. It's because of land values. But back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, the drive-in was an institution. And I Targets is not only a tribute to Boris Karloff, I think it's also a tribute to an American tradition, which is the drive-in theater. They're not really making a comeback, which is kind of a shame. I thought during the pandemic, I thought for sure that drive-ins would be coming back in some way. They never really did, but and it's still a very niche thing. I know there's like less than 100 left in the country.
Yeah,
that's sad. That's sad.
I mean, anyway. Having seen Targets, would going to a drive-in give you pause now, though?
Maybe.
A little bit.
I mean, yeah. I would put it up to because my parent, or at least my mom, had saw Jaws in theaters while in Pensacola, Florida, and then went to the beach later that afternoon.
Excellent choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But it's funny when you're talking about the all-American boy.
Yes.
The killer. We do get some information about his background. We know that he was a Vietnam War vet. He's living at home with his parents, even though he is married. He and his wife live there.
Very odd, but yeah.
Well, I'm guessing he only recently probably came home from the war. So
yeah, you could assume that.
Probably just a matter of him getting back on his feet because he's got an insurance job. Mm-hmm. And his wife works as I believe, a phone operator on the night shift. So it's not like they're not making progress.
Right.
But beyond that, I mean, what else would we know about him? I mean, he's probably got some PTSD. We do see him go through depersonalization as he collects more and, as he buys more and more guns and is kind of going about his business leading up to this mass shooting. Chris, I know that you had some ideas about his background too that you picked up.
So for me, I picked up on when he gets to the house and he sneaks into his house and he's going through all the stuff and he's looking at the picture of himself from the Vietnam War in his uniform. That's the only time you see this character smiling is in that photo.
Yeah, I didn't get that. I didn't pick that up at all.
As well as, I also just thought about it just now, the only thing you see him eat is Baby Ruth bars, the entire movie. Like
red, white, and blue. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Exactly. Red, white, blue, like Baby Ruth bars. And it's a sweet, it's a candy, it kind of pick me up, kind of stuff like that. He's not drinking, he's not eating, he's not sleeping. He's just eating sugar this entire time. In the dinner scene where he's showing up, for dinner, and he's passed the plates along. He's not eating anything shown to the audience. So it's almost like he is like a childlike wonderness of the universe. Because I also kind of picked up, he's the youngest child, because that's the family portrait. He has an older brother. The mom brings it to the older brother, but older brother, he has a wife, he has a kid. The kid may be sick, but they're doing amazing. So I kind of figured that he is kind of like the redheaded stepchild, as it were, in this family, because he's not accomplishing anything. He's doing his insurance job, but he's not really getting anywhere because he still lives at home. It's a very well-off family because they have a TV, they have a dining room, he has a convertible, and he's not achieving what his dad wants him to achieve. And his dad is not a paternal figure. His dad is a son. It's not what I'm looking for. He only calls his dad sir. It's not hey dad, hey Paul, hey anything. It's just sir.
Yeah, more impersonal authority figure.
Yeah. Thank you. Authority figure, exactly. And as well as his dad definitely works with like an iron grip on the family, because when he goes to bed, the wife has to go to bed. Because like 3 seconds after he's like, I'm tired, I'm going to bed, he's already calling for the wife as she's trying to talk to her son, like, hey, and making sure you're okay.
Yeah. And
so it's sorry to cut you off there. It's a lot of him being lesser than his entire life, which is why whenever he was in Vietnam, he's smiling there. It's because he achieved something. He was successful in his marksmanship. He was only happy as well before that when we have him and the dad shooting the targets, making a bet for putting it back up, and he never missed.
Yeah, and that kind of makes more sense now that I'm thinking about when you're bringing it up when he's not missing, when he's out there shooting with his dad, because he doesn't kill his father. He kills his mother, he kills his wife, he kills the grocery boy, but not his dad.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's because he's afraid or intimidated of his father, or if it's one of those things where kind of the positive feedback he got was, when he was lauded for good marksmanship, right? And he's sort of holding on to that. Even though prior to that, his father admonishes him for, pointing a gun at somebody, pointing a gun at him earlier in the film.
As you should, but...
Yeah, of course, as you should. So, I wonder.
I mean, that's a very good point.
Huh? I'm sorry, Chris.
Nothing. It's a very good point. Like, why did you shoot the father? Like, I thought it was more his father could have offered resistance, but I like your interpretation a lot better, because it was the accommodation for some of that. What he valued was his marksmanship stuff, and the father recognized that. That's kind of why when he's talking to his wife, whenever she's about to go off to her job at the night shift, this is 1968. Wives barely worked. It was mainly supposed to be a single income family. And then if you had to have your wife worked, you were a giant loser. And then he was asking his wife, am I worthy? Like, it was basically kind of like this cry for help. And she just kind of like, oh, no, you're fine. Kind of ignoring it, not really acknowledging it.
Yeah. That's a good point. Stone, do you have any thoughts about the motivation of the killer in this?
Look, I
know we're conjecturing, but still.
I listen to my fair share of true crime, and it's amazing how with a lot of these mass murders, and I know politics is a driving force, but going above that for a minute, the thing is, it seems to be a lot of these killers, they seem to be, not meeting expectations to family members, to people around them. They don't feel like they fit in or they belong, or that they've been, restricted or handcuffed or something like that. It's always some kind of, locked prison-like environment that they feel like that they're in, and they feel like the only way they can break out is with weaponry. I forget his name. There was one specific one down in, I believe it was down in Texas, where this guy just killed almost his entire family except for his father. And when he was pressed by reporters later on, why did you do this? Why did you do this? Because he didn't feel he was worthy enough of what the family expected of him. I don't remember his name, but I know it was a huge, huge case. And I just noticed a pattern with a lot of these that, of course, it goes back to the lack of mental health that we, have in this country, and able to address those type of needs, especially for, veterans who suffer from these anxieties and everything. And also, it's just, the culture, and, here again, being in 1968, being so ahead of its time in terms of, the nightmare that we would face as citizens, in that people can are just arsenal themselves and go out and kill whoever they want, how many they want, without. It's so scary, but and and just to throw it out there for the audience and everything, I am not anti-Second Amendment. It's complicated. It's just complicated. I'm not comfortable being around guns personally, but then again, there are people that are perfectly comfortable around it. That's just not me. I get anxious and everything. Or rather, it's also weird because on a funny note, because when I joined the military, I expected to learn marksmanship, and I didn't. Of course, I was in the Navy, but what they gave us basically a gun, and we shot at a target, and it was basically a laser type of thing. It wasn't a real. I was actually a little surprised that we didn't go out to an actual range and actually shot firearms. I'm actually very surprised about that. But yeah, but as far as the motivations, I think there's more than enough clues scattered throughout, and credit must be given to filmmaker Samuel Fuller, who did not take credit in. He rewrote like 90% of the script for Bogdanovich, but yeah, I mean, they provide enough clues to make us understand what, or at least question what is driving him. And he barely says a word. He only talks to the gun owner, and he tried talking to his wife, but he doesn't say much. And we just follow him as he's almost like a zombie. I keep thinking of Night of the Living Dead, 1968. Like I said, I think 1968 is a landmark year in horror with this, Night of the Living Dead, and Rosemary's Baby. Absolutely landmark year. And I think Target should be included in that conversation and that equation because of how it showcased old horror versus new horror. And same way with that, Night of the Living Dead was the the modern touchstone of what horror could be in 68, and it still has the power to chill, just like Targets, just like Rosemary's Baby. But anyway,
yeah, Targets, I think, because it was a commercial failure.
Yeah,
it's sort of one of those movies that is not really going to be remembered very much,
right?
Which is a shame, because you're correct. It's very much ahead of its time. I don't know if you definitely couldn't, remake this, in this time, because I feel like the message of, well, I'm not going to try and project a message on it, but I think that people would call it out for being exploitative, when I don't think that's a fair judgment, because one of the things that I really it doesn't feel exploitative, like watching Bobby Thompson go about getting ready to commit this heinous act. He is very much a zombie, but you can feel how detached he is from the rest of reality. You can feel how unreal he is feeling. So, and it's not in a sympathetic way. I don't know, but yeah, you couldn't make it at this point in time. Something I wanted to mention about the house, though, that house also feels very unreal. It feels like a liminal space, just one of those places that you just kind of transition through, but it doesn't feel like it's a set point in time. And then I was, reading some of the IMDb stuff, and it was apparently that, that in the hotel room, there were set pieces that were just repainted, right?
Yep.
So you've got both of these stories happening like next to each other, and they're supposed to come to a point later in the film. But for a while, when you're seeing Bobby in this house, they're almost crisscrossing. It's a very weird effect.
Very, very eerie. Yeah, the fact that they were basically shot. I mean, that's the efficiency of Roger Corman filmmaking too. And going back to the release, and part of the reason why it bombed is because the fact that literally, RFK just got assassinated, Martin Luther King just got assassinated, and all that. So there was this fear on Paramount's part. Actually, the funny thing is with Paramount is that. Roger Corman, when he finished the movie, he wanted to try to sell it to a major. He wanted to, maybe I can sell this to a major. So he went to Paramount. And apparently, through mutual acquaintances, somebody at Paramount saw it and loved it, said, "Oh, we want to buy this." They sent the print to Charles Bluedorn, who ran Gulf and Western, which owned Paramount at the time, and he actually liked it, but his assistant hated it. So Paramount never picked it up. So what happened is that what Bogdanovich decided to do very smartly was he decided to do a screening at a college for it, and he called up a couple of people he knew at a newspaper and said, "Hey, tell you what, come over, watch the movie. If you like it, do a positive review. If you don't like it, don't say a word." They were like, "Okay, yeah, we'll do that." So they came and they thought it was a great movie. They wrote 2 highly positive reviews in the paper. Robert Evans at Paramount circled it, sent it to Charles Bluedorn, and said, "I think we made a mistake." And that's when RFK and Martin Luther King and all that went down. But it's funny. Yeah. Night of the Living Dead got affected the same way. They were driving the print to New York when Martin Luther King got shot, George Romero and his editor. Now, just imagine you have a film starring an African American and Martin Luther King just got shot. I mean, it would be hard to leave the side of the road.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, but yeah, interesting parallels.
Oh yeah, and it's, if they did decide to remake this, it could be like X amount of days without a mass shooting. They'd be driving again. It would be one of those situations. They're driving it to the studio, then it happens. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think there's probably no such thing as perfect timing.
Paramount will never remake this. They'll hold on to the rights, but they'll never remake this. I mean, they never released a Blu-ray of it. That's why Criterion had to come forward to with the Blu-ray. But just real quick, so this was the first time you both had seen it,
right? Oh yeah.
And when the movie was over, what did you both individually think of it?
I mean, for me, I thought it was really good, and I was also at the same time I was still letting it sink in because I felt like it was really layered, and I had to kind of chew it over a lot. Yeah. So, and I think that's one of the best parts of the movie is it does give you a lot of stuff to think about, especially with the mass shooting aspect. The real life horror, right? And it's weird because it's again, look how popular true crime is. That's kind of similar situation these days, and in a lot of ways, yeah, the real life stuff is scary. Is going to be much scarier than any kind of monster that you put on the screen. I was thinking back to the shooting in Allen, Texas, and the shooter had a video on YouTube before YouTube pulled it.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I saw it before they got it. And he was wearing a ghost face mask, and he pulls it off and says, "Not what you were expecting, is it?" with a voice changer. And it was chilling because of what had just happened. So, yeah, I mean, yeah. Also, I would, it's funny. I know this is technically like a horror thriller. I feel like this is definitely, there's definitely more suspense in it for me. There's a constant feeling of terror, though. Anytime that Bobby Thompson is on screen, just low-level terror. Because there's nothing that's indicating what's going to happen next in a scene or what his next actions are. And that's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of the unpredictability of the situation. Because you know what he's going to do, but you don't know exactly when that's going to happen. Yeah.
Nothing's telegraphed with this guy. Nothing. Right. It's like, I mean, when you were watching, you had no idea that he was going to go out to an oil tower and shoot people on the freeway, did you?
No, not until we got there.
Yeah.
I thought that the drive-in was his intended destination, but that ends up just being a place that he kind of ends up accidentally being because he's on the run from the cops.
Yeah.
So. Chris, what were your thoughts on, after we watched this?
Like you, kind of have to really kind of chew this over on stuff. But I was thinking back to other kind of stuff, like as Stone pointed out, the Charles Whitman shooting. And Stone bringing up earlier in the conversation kind of made me think of that was kind of the first kind of mass shooting that was in the news.
Yeah.
Kind of remind me of another similar thing in California, the O.J. Simpson chase. That kind of brought chases in the news everywhere, kind of changed news on its head for like 24-hour access and things like that. So that's kind of making similarities to that. But in the movie itself, though, I felt like it was trying to tell a message and doing it the best it could in 1968 for mental health, for PTSD before we had a diagnosis for it, for a lot of stuff. Because it didn't feel like the movie was trying to say, "Oh, guns bad, boom bang bad."
Exactly.
It very much felt like it was doing a great job of talking about if you don't take care of your citizens, bad things can happen. Ooh. Because whenever he's on the oil refinery, kind of stuff like that, he's going through these no trespassing, all these gates are supposed to be locked, all of these things that society has let slip through laziness, and bad things happen because of that. Same thing with the at the theater. He went into the access area behind the screen that should have been locked, but it wasn't. Like the gates earlier, nothing was locked. The society was very trusting. So targets could have almost been called soft targets, as it were, because there's nobody to really stop him.
Yeah, I mean, that's also another good point that I don't know if we really touched on it, but I just brings it back to the depersonalization that he's feeling, is that people he's not recognizing people as actual human beings. He's recognizing them as just targets.
Yep.
They've lost meaning to him. Yeah. So let me see, where were we in this? I wanted to bring up the appointment in Samara, because that's like a short story that Byron Orlok is considering. He wants to tell that at the theater appearance that he's supposed to make at the drive-in.
Yeah.
Something kind of memorable. So that actually, I found two different iterations of it. So there's the short story itself from W. Somerset Maugham. Now, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And that is where you have, I believe it's a gentleman in a bazaar in Baghdad, I think it is. And his servant comes up to him and says that he's seen death in the market, and death made a threatening gesture towards him. And please let me, go to Samara to flee, to get away from death. And so his master lets him go. And then his master confronts death in the market and says, "Death, bitch, what's up? Why did you make this threatening gesture towards my servant?" And she's like, "Wasn't me. I was just really shocked to see it here because I got an appointment with him in Samara later." So there is so we have that first one. And I thought that was going to be, I honestly thought that this was going to point out, Orlok is going to have that appointment with death later. I thought that appointment was for him. Because at the beginning of the movie, we see the crosshairs on Orlok's head.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then, that definitely gets turned around at the end. So is it more Bobby's appointment? Even though Bobby is alive at the end of the movie? And you got your ass whooped by an old man, I gotta say, dude.
See, that's the thing. I mean, not everybody has been happy with the ending. I've always been satisfied with the end. I think that I think the points that Bogdanovich is making are pretty clear. And I like how the stories intersect at the end, and we here again, we think about, these different paths and what brought these two together, and how it pertains to the country as a whole. Like what Chris was saying, that, that these things happen in society and they shouldn't have to. We can put a plug on them, but without being overtly political about it. At least I don't think so. I mean, did you guys know what Quentin Tarantino said about targets?
Was he asking about the feet?
What?
Was he asking if there were any feet in it?
Feet?
Because He has a foot fetish, like it was the wife's feet there. Like I like to see her feet after she had a long day or whatever. Tarantino's a weirdo.
Oh,
but
no,
he's big,
no.
great movies.
I mean, we don't kink shame here. I'm just, just some playful ribbing content, I promise.
In 2020, Quentin Tarantino called Targets the most political movie Corman ever made since The Intruder. And 40 years later, it's still one of the strongest cries for gun control in American cinema. The film isn't a thriller with a social commentary buried inside of it, the normal Corman model. It's a social commentary with a thriller buried inside of it. It was one of the most powerful films of 1968 and one of the greatest directorial debuts of all time. And I believe the best film ever produced by Roger Corman. That's pretty high praise right there. I'm not sure if I agree with every single word of that. I'm not sure I would, but that's high praise right there. I mean, that's saying a lot. I would, I've seen a lot of movies produced by Roger Corman and even directed by Roger Corman over the years. This is definitely top 3. I don't know if I would say it's my absolute favorite or the best one I've ever seen in my life, but Corman deserves a lot of credit for this movie. I mean, as much as Bogdanovich and Samuel Fuller.
This movie doesn't happen without him.
And Boris Karloff, for that matter. I mean, like I said, this is a tribute to Boris's long career, and he would be gone just a year later. He passed away in 69, I believe, at the age of 82, and so this was really the final hurrah. And we love spending time with him. I mean, all the scenes. I mean, see, that's the thing. It helps that if this was just the second story of the kid going off, I don't think it would be near as memorable without all the Karloff stuff.
No,
it just wouldn't be near. It would just be another exploitation movie from Corman.
Well, exactly. As well as Karloff felt very genuine in every single scene he was in, and very emotional, very loving to the craft, and all of that in all those scenes. He wasn't just there as a favor. It was there because he wanted to be there, and it came out through his acting, I feel.
Oh yeah, they only needed 2 days from him. They shot 5 days.
Yeah.
I mean, that says a lot right there. He was happy to do this. I mean, and no words. I mean, even though the movie bombed, I mean, at least he got good notices. At least all the critics said, "Oh, yeah, he's great in this." I mean, absolutely. And see, what was the other thing I was going to say about Karloff is that it's just looking at this movie in terms of his entire career. I mean, sure, Bride of Frankenstein, probably the high point. But of course, he made many other memorable movies at Universal, as I just mentioned. But the two that really stand out are Bride of Frankenstein and Targets. And on top of all that, the movie that they watch in the hotel room. By the way, did we mention Peter Bogdanovich actually plays the director on screen here?
We didn't, but yes.
Real quick, what did you think of him? What did you think of Bogdanovich as an actor?
I was thinking he reminded me of Sam Rockwell a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I thought he was great. He plays a smarmy director great.
Exactly. Like, it's very much a very business first kind of stuff. It is very. Yeah. I enjoyed that.
He's still trying to get wet with Jenny. Come on now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the movie they were watching in the hotel room was actually a Howard Hawks movie called The Criminal Code.
Yeah.
Which Boris Karloff made back in 1931. It's actually one of his. A film that everybody should check out, along with the original Scarface, where Boris Karloff plays a Chicago bootlegger named Gaffney. And what's so famous, and I'm one of the few people that I actually prefer the 32 Scarface over the Al Pacino one. When Tony Camonte in the original Scarface, when they go to gun down Gaffney and his gang, they do it in a bowling alley. And so, it's symbolic. Whenever somebody gets shot, you see the bowling ball hit all the bowling pins. And the last one, it gets shot and it's about to fall down. The pin's about to fall down, and you hear a gunshot. Boom, dead. It's awesome. It's awesome. The original Scarface is so underrated, underseen. Also directed by Howard Hawks, by the way. But and Karloff, of course, he made a lot of bad movies too. I mean, Frankenstein, 1970. Some of those others, like some of the ones that he made in like Mexico City and whatnot. I mean, but fortunately, none of them were as bad as Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla. Fortunately, none of them were as bad as that.
Yeah, this is why I have a blind spot. I can't stay in the void. Oh man!
You want to do that movie next? Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla.
I'm considering it, but just personally, like Dracula's not my favorite Universal monster. It's always going to be Claude Rains as the Invisible Man.
Yeah,
but Bela Lugosi is probably either second or tied with Karloff playing Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten around to seeing The Mummy, so I can't judge. I started it, but I didn't finish it, and I was like 10 minutes in, so I will not make any judgments about the movie until I watch it all the way through. So, I wanted to segue real quick back to The Appointment in Samara, though. But did you know that there's because of that short story, there's a book by an author named, I think it's John O'Hara, that's based off of that. And let me see. So, and it describes basically over the course of 3 days, this character named Julian English, he's destroying himself through a series of impulsive acts and basically culminates in suicide. And I immediately thought, it's kind of similar to what we're watching here, except Bobby isn't doing, it doesn't die in the end, right? But he's self-destructing, and we're watching that happen. And one of the, in each of these incidents, the narrator, it's like a third person narrator. They never actually show us the details of the incident, but it shows you Julian like fantasizing in great detail about the act itself. And so it's kind of misleading you to think that he's committed it, right? And then you're like, oh, no, wait, that was just a fantasy. And then it snaps you back and it's like, oh, no, shit, he really did that. So it's that little misdirection there. And what made me think, what brought this to mind is when he shoots his wife and his mother, right? Yeah. That doesn't feel real at all.
Yeah.
And Chris thought it was a dream.
It does feel dreamlike, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I don't know exactly what impact the John O'Hara book has. Do I even have a title on it? That would be fucking helpful. I think it is just called The Appointment in Samara, but it's written by John O'Hara.
Oh.
But yeah, that I don't know what impact that had on the movie or what influence that had on this movie per se, but it seems like it's there. Let me see.
Actually, as you look for that, I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, it is The Appointment in Samara by John O'Hara. So let's see. Samara appears only in the novel's title and foreword, not in the story itself. O'Hara borrows the phrase "appointment in Samara" from a play, Sheppy, in 1933 by W. Somerset Maugham, whose allusion is to an ancient Arabic fable in which a merchant servant desperately attempts to avoid death by traveling to Samara. Interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea that that story was so influential in this.
I can see that.
I mean, you can see how it plays out in the events that take place for Bobby, though, right?
Oh, exactly. As well as I was getting a little side kind of silly kind of jab. Is this movie actually subverts expectations correctly?
Yeah.
Because I definitely feel like this movie, like you feel like he's supposed to be going after Baron Orlok the entire time, but he's not. It's just happenstance. He happens to end up there where he's at. Because it's like, oh, he sees Orlok in the crosshairs. Then he mentions seeing Orlok to his family, and he sees the movie theater. Like, oh, hey, Orlok, kind of stuff like that. All of that has nothing to do with why he ends up there. It's just happenstance.
He was just there to hide out, basically.
Exactly.
He was just basically there to hide out. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at the end of this mass shooting in the drive-in, I mean, I think at this point Bobby has dropped a bunch of ammo and he's trying to go down and get it. And that's when Byron Orlok confronts him because Orlok's assistant, Jenny, has just been shot through the shoulder, right? And this is also kind of a weird moment for me because there's all this real life horror literally happening around them at that point in time. So close to Orlok, that he's probably got blood splattered on his suit. Who knows? So, but he still goes up and approaches the shooter. And he goes and it's like, you young whippersnapper, and bops him with his cane, even after he gets dying, right?
Love it. I love it.
Yeah. And, just slaps the shit out of Bobby. And it's like, okay, problem solved. And he asks, this is what I was afraid of. And for a second there, I know that we've been talking about Bobby's depersonalization of everyone around him, but now I'm kind of wondering the level of depersonalization that Orlok seems to have too, because you can see this happening, dude. This isn't fictional horror, I'm wondering what because he doesn't have a death wish, right? That doesn't come through. He doesn't, and he's kind of just walking very intently towards the shooter, right? Not quite the same as being like not like in a zombified manner like Bobby was, but still kind of take it like it.
He may die tomorrow. He's fearless. I mean,
I wouldn't say fearless. To me, the way I took it as is he was already ready to go off to the island and die. Like he was already ready to go back to England, ready to go off to the sunset and pass away in peace. And he's already given up on himself and living longer. And so he was already like, holy shit, my close personal friend, who's my secretary, I care deeply about this person, has been injured. I'm already going to die anyway. I'm just going to fucking go up there and confront the guy. And then he has fear, and that's why he's a brave person for going against his fear of stuff like that. And it's almost the way I took it as that's what I was scared of. It's kind of like confronting death. Confronting these things is like, why was I scared of death before? Why was I scared of being not remembered or anything like that?
Right.
Because it was like he had all these bad movies before this. He had all this kind of negative press on him. He wasn't being held, like Bobby, to a high esteem he thought he should have been held to.
Right. But I don't get the sense of fear that should be coming from Orlok, right? The appointment tomorrow is not his appointment. It's Bobby's appointment.
Not. Exactly. I agree.
It's Bobby's appointment. That's why Bobby's afraid.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. Because it's like that for, the scene where Orlok's in the crosshairs, it's kind of similar to the scene in the market where death makes a threatening gesture, except like, it's not like death isn't actually death. It would be Orlok, but Orlok is unaware of the crosshairs pointed at, on him that are set on him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just kind of, wondering if Orlok is also detached from, because of the way, because he is from the realm of like fictional horror, right? He probably also, do you think it's how should I put this? I feel like he also kind of looks at the people around him, not like targets, right? But not quite the same as,
not equals
on his level almost. I'm not saying big leaguing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, the fact that he went up to Bobby and kind of just very intently just like took him out. It kind of reminded me of how Bobby acted when he was just kind of like in autopilot, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I got out of it. Thoughts?
Interesting.
Maybe it's just me. I can't stop thinking about it.
That's a good thought process. Almost kind of like where the story is played out by like two sides of a coin, the bad side, the good side, kind of stuff like that.
Right.
Where,
it's parallel narratives, and I feel like
it's
still parallel narratives to the end.
Exactly. So like where Bobby depersonalization, dehumanization kind of stuff, everything, he's causing destruction, where Orlok is depersonalization stuff is saving almost by like completely ignoring everything around him almost. So it's almost like using that negativity for positivity. I don't know. I'm just spitballing stuff right now.
No, well, I mean, the parallel narratives are also, that's it's definitely intentional in that final scene because you've got real life Orlok and you've got Orlok on the movie screen, and it is disorienting Bobby, right?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Working from that foundation, that's why I'm still feeling the whole depersonalization theme happening with Orlok too. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's like I've had to think about this movie for so long.
See, and that's why I love movies like this that make you think, and of course, you can have multiple interpretations of it all. When I think of when Bobby is shooting everybody in the cars and everything, I was thinking of, and I'm not sure. I know that Bogdanovich was inspired by John Ford and some of the great American directors, but what I thought of, believe it or not, was the Great Train Robbery from 1903, which is, of course, this very famous movie where we see the great train robbery happen over the course of 10 minutes. And at the end, all we see is a cowboy in front of the camera. It takes out his gun and just starts shooting people. And I could believe people in 1903 screaming and running because they thought they were being shot at.
Yeah.
I mean, back in 1900, if they see a train coming at them on screen, they literally thought that was a real train. Well, that made me think of Targets when Bobby was shooting people inside the cars from behind the screen. It made me think of that. Like, yeah, because there's a lot of. I mean, you could see Bogdanovich, the film student, so much in a lot of these scenes and a lot of these shots. And I mean, that's what I'm saying. Would you both agree for a first film, this is very, very impressive?
Oh, absolutely. The script is also the script and the directing both equally impressive.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely impressive. And actually, since we're coming up on like the hour mark here, the reason why I had to dip out real quick, this is out of print, but this is the original Paramount DVD of Targets. It's out of print now, but you could probably get a copy for like $20 or $30.
Yeah.
And when they put this out in 2013, they actually had a commentary with Peter Bogdanovich, as well as an introduction in the bonus features, which was pretty cool of Paramount to do. And the introduction and the commentary are both very good. I mean, and Bogdanovich, tells the entire story of how Targets came to be and everything. But Criterion just released a brand new Blu-ray of it, and I think it was the last thing that Bogdanovich worked on before he died. I mean, he literally this Blu-ray is dedicated to him and his memory, and it's got like a lot of Criterions, it has a booklet with pictures and essays, an interview with Peter Bogdanovich, which is really cool. There's the essay right there.
Oh, wow.
Pretty cool. American Sniper by Adam Naiman. Yeah, really good. I love that. I just love how the title is projected like that. Boris Karloff in Targets. And there's, of course, the Daisy target. And then on the end scene.
Nice, yes.
I love it.
Fantastic.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And then there's the back right there. And they have a couple of brand new bonus features on here. They have, new 4K digital master supervised by director Peter Bogdanovich with uncompressed monaural soundtrack. Audio commentary from 2003 featuring Bogdanovich plus new interview with filmmaker Richard Linklater. Now, this interview with Richard Linklater is about an hour long. And, of course, he's the famous director behind Dazed and Confused and Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Boyhood, which I think is overrated as hell, but that's just me.
Probably not his best piece, but
it took 12 years to make. Did you know that? Did you know it took 12 years to make? Who cares? I love Richard Linklater. I mean, he very few films he's made I did not like. Boyhood was one of them. The other one was the Bad News Bears remake. Otherwise, I've liked everything else, even School of Rock.
Fair. I didn't see the Bad News Bears remake. Don't need to see it. I'm good.
Billy Bob, no, you don't need to see Billy Bob trying to one up on Walter Matthau. I mean, come on.
No.
Introduction to the film from 2003 by Bogdanovich. Audio excerpts from a 1983 interview with production designer Polly Platt at the American Film Institute, which is a great, even though Polly Platt and Peter Bogdanovich's stories kind of line up, of course, there is a thread of disagreement, flowing through there as far as like taking credit for certain things, of course. But anyway, so a great interview there. English subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, plus an essay by critic Adam Naiman, and excerpts from an interview with Bogdanovich from Eric Sherman and Martin Rubin's 1969 book, The Director's Event, interviews with 5 American filmmakers. So, yeah. And the Criterion sale, for those of you who are listening, is still going on. It's going on until July 31st. Go to Barnes & Noble. You can pick up Targets for $20.
Same with Amazon. You can also get it there, but
you can also get it at Amazon. Yeah, true. But yeah, I love this Blu-ray. I think this is one of the best ones that Criterion has put out this year or any other year. I mean, it's
for $20, that is an excellent price for Criterion.
It is.
Excellent price. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
So yeah, there's Targets on physical media for you.
Yeah, and I would definitely recommend anybody that hasn't seen the movie to watch it. We rented it on Amazon for about $4 or $5.
Yeah.
It's
worth it. It's worth it.
I mean, I think we're all going to agree that it's a recommendation, right?
Oh yeah.
I think there are very few. Yeah, there are very few episodes that we have where I would not recommend a movie. So I might have to change that up. We need to get some hate entries on here.
I'll bring something.
I'm sure you will, motherfucker. It made me watch Monster Squad again. I hate it. It's fine.
I like how the cat's just paying attention to everything you're saying.
Oh, she's our mascot. Yes.
Oh.
She's the podcat mascot. Yes. But yeah,
Kitty.
Appreciate you for coming on. But is there anything else you want to share about this movie before we close up shop?
I'm trying to think if we've gone over everything. I believe we have. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. No. I mean, absolutely. Just go see it. Go rent it. Go pick up the new Criterion Blu-ray if you're so inclined. It is absolutely worth it for the extras and the 4K and everything. And even though, let me just say in closing, I know that Peter Bogdanovich wasn't exactly the very complicated filmmaker. I think we can all agree. Very shades of black and white and gray and everything else. Very, very interesting, complicated filmmaker. I understand why in some circles he's considered a master. I completely understand that. Me personally, like I said, there's only a few films from Bogdanovich's filmography I will take with me moving forward. And Targets is one of them. Paper Moon is another. And then finally, Noise is Off, which is a comedy with Michael Caine, Christopher Reeve, John Ritter, Michael Caine. I mean, just a lot of Carol Burnett, huge comedy cast, and nobody's seen it. But on closing, it is produced by Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy, of course, runs Lucasfilm now. Mm-hmm. And Frank Marshall, who, of course, used to work as an assistant to Bogdanovich, actually appears in Targets as the kid who takes the tickets going into the drive-in theater.
Wow. Yeah, his feature film debut.
And of course, his name was just on Indiana Jones and the Diaper of Destiny, which was released just a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, Frank Marshall, he's still in the biz. He's still doing his thing. And,
he started off strong.
But, I mean, look, the thing is that with Bogdanovich, it's just, he is a master in some circles. I respect that. Not exactly the most I don't know if I'd ever want to meet him in person. Let's put it that way. I mean, he probably would be a great conversationalist in terms of film, but the truth is, yeah, aside from those 3 films, Targets and Paper Moon and Noises Off, that's basically about it for me and Peter Bogdanovich moving forward.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, what do you got coming up on your channel? Pimp out your shows, man.
Yeah, I need to bring my commentaries back. Yes, I know. I'm gonna bring my commentaries back soon. I've been having internet issues, bandwidth issues, so I'm gonna fix that hopefully very soon. Get my I'm gonna fix it soon. I'm gonna fix everything soon.
Okay. Well, where can we stalk you online?
Twitter, Stone Gasman. I'm trying to think if there's anything. Well, and also on YouTube, Stone Gasman. I mean, I'm basically on Twitter and YouTube for the most part, but I'm glad I discovered Spoutable because that sounds like a very interesting little platform.
It's interesting. I mean, it's a Twitter clone. I'm kind of, I spend my time
okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of bouncing around between Spoutable and Threads and spending minimal time on Twitter. I think I'm eventually going to be quitting that platform altogether when I can.
Yeah, I'm sure it's inevitable. But after 6 years, I'd hate to leave it, especially after building such an audience. Yeah.
Well, Musk ruined it, so what are you gonna do? What happens when you let the neo-Nazis back on?
Yeah. Pretty much.
Cool. Chris, Baron Chris Locke, where can we find you online? You don't have to say if you don't want to.
Oh, I'm a ghost. I disappear in the night.
Yeah.
No, I'm barely on Twitter, barely on any social media platform.
Okay, fair enough. My socials are always just going to be in the link below. So, or on the link on the banner, whichever.
Yeah.
But until next time, I'm going to go shoot some pigs. Bye, guys.
Mm-hmm.